Copetti heading back to Argentina after a season and a little bit more in Charlotte. It feels a little weird considering that they've just, offloaded so many players, especially on the big contracts. But Charlotte has never been afraid to move on from a designated player. We saw they brought in Jordi Alcivar, and he was done after the first year, right? So they're not afraid to do that. But your thoughts on this whole saga, I guess, for lack of a better term?
It's so very Charlotte FC. I mean, this shouldn't be surprising to anybody. Their first ever coach lasted 14 games in charge, and then he was gone. So Charlotte is clearly not afraid to change things up. I would say, I mean, I want to say it's because they're struggling, which you can argue they have been the last 2 years, but they're sixth place in the table right now. I wouldn't say necessarily that they're struggling this season. That being said, I mean, it's been pretty clear that Capetti has not lived up to the DP title and the fee spent to bring him in. So I don't necessarily think it's a wrong move for them to make if they necessarily felt like they weren't seeing enough improvement from him. I mean, he's had, I would say, more than enough time at this point to kind of show that he has some potential, but we've only seen 7 goals from him in about 2,500 minutes, which that's arguably not even good enough for a TAM level player, let alone your designated player. So for them to move on from him, I don't think it's a bad move. I mean, I'm glad that they're not like in a situation where they feel like they have to keep around designated players. Maybe a situation that like Portland ran into where you have like aging designated players on your team because you don't want to move on from them. But it could be good for them. I mean, you open up the door for a team that's in sixth place right now. If you make the right additions, I mean, you're talking about a team that's securing their place in the playoffs. So I think it was the right move to move on from him. I don't think he was showing enough to justify that designated player tag. And now it's just going to be a game of seeing if they can get it right for once, because as we talked about in our tier list episode, Charlotte has not exactly had a very good designated player history.
Correct. And I think it points to two different things, right? Is first off, Charlotte showing that they're not afraid to try and then move on from things, right? I think Chicago is another one where they try a lot and they
Oh,
fail a
they
lot.
try a lot.
But
That's
but
for
do
sure.
they but what are they like Jordan Shaqiri, for example, like is one of those players that they try a lot on. Doesn't hit, but he's been around for so long with such underperforming numbers. I also think that it's also a really big positive if you're Dean Smith to say, hey, I don't like these players. If you want me to win, you need to give me some flexibility to do X, Y, and Z. And the club's like, all right, we'll do it. Give us a plan of what you want to do. We'll try and go about it, and we'll do our best to get there. And I think that's such it's a fresh lift for MLS because as we just mentioned, you don't usually see stuff like that. It's usually, oh yeah, well he's got guaranteed through X amount and he's got blah 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 blah. And it's always an excuse of why they got to keep somebody around. Not here. If you don't want him, right? We got a new coach. We trust this new coach. We're gonna invest so that he can give us the best that he can give us. Capetti's gone. I don't know what the I don't see anything reported saying how much it might cost. Yeah, not even in the original tweet that broke it. But regardless of if they get it back or not, right? This is kind of the transition I think that we have been expecting as the rules get a little looser, where teams aren't afraid to say, okay, I'm going to eat a little bit of a loss so that I can get better in the future. And I think that's a really nice sign, personally.
Well, not every team is like that.
Yeah, well, it's starting to get there, right?
I mean, you still have teams like Houston who it's clear at this point. I feel like that Ben Olsen does not rate Sebastian Ferreira, and yet he's still taking up a DB spot on the team. So I would imagine it's only a matter of time before they follow suit and free up that spot. But I'm definitely on board for teams following this mold for Charlotte of not, you know, just continuously sticking with somebody who's underperforming just because he makes a lot of money, or you're still hoping to recoup the money you invested originally. But we will have to. I think other teams are still a little bit far from getting to that point.
Sure. Well, on the flip side of this, sorry, as we're speaking, Enzo Copetti confirms his move by commenting on Kerwin Vargas's new contract post saying, "I'm happy for your brother. I hope things can keep going very well. I'm going to miss you a lot. Take care and keep tearing it up." Vargas says, "Thanks, brother. I hope you're tearing it up wherever you go. A big hug. I'll miss you a lot. Cope goal." So that all but confirms that this is no longer a rumor, but a confirmed move.
What's your
Um,
source? Can you give me your source?
literally the source. um,
Literally him.
yeah, but the such a really interesting flip side of this, right? Is you always focus on the player, but what does this set the team up for, right? And Tom did a really good layout of this. Charlotte is expecting a huge summer over the next couple months here, right? So with this move, they can add two DPs and a U22, or one DP and three U22s with the extra money that would come in from it, right? So depending on which way they go, they are about to blow up. Like I would expect you to see the probably the most active mid-season transfer window in a very long time from Charlotte, based off of the kind of vibes and the feelings going about this.
Why do you say a very long time from Charlotte? Like they haven't been around
No,
for
no, no. I mean
few
in the
years.
league. I mean comparative to the league, like
I
any
wouldn't say
team.
that. I mean, Messi came in last summer.
All right, that is never, ever, ever involved when we talk about the league. That is so far above the league. That is just he transcends any conversation of general league.
I mean, even if you took out Messi, Miami still brought in like 800 players last year. I don't know, but I'm optimistic for them. I think they're already in a good place, and they need to capitalize on this window and bring in the right guys. But that's the big if, if they can bring in the right guys to support this team. Whereas they haven't shown like there's no track record of history that says that they're good at that right now. So hopefully with, you know, Dean Smith in charge, maybe he gets more of a say in who comes in, and if that's the case, then I think Charlotte could be in a good spot to make a run this season and in future seasons. But I will have cautious optimism for what they're able to accomplish in the summer.
Well, here's what I'll tell you, right? When we looked at our tier list and our designated player history, we saw right about that third or fourth year, you either flip the switch and hit on a ton of them, or you were Chicago and you had like 4 or 5, 6 extra years of nonsense, right? This window, I think, carries a lot of weight for uh, Charlotte in which direction they go. Are they going to just be a team that swings and tries and misses and swings and tries and misses, or are they going to actually turn it around, scout properly, and implement as they'd like? That's going to be something really interesting to watch. All right, well let's then move on to the U.S. Open